This is Ron Doucet, Animation Director Extraordinaire, and this is the True North Country Comics Podcast.
Welcome to the True North Country Comics Podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book and graphic novel creators and supporters. I'm John Swinimer. On this episode, I chat with Ron Doucet about animation, comic books, and Super Team Canada. Please like and subscribe to this website by hitting the subscribe button so you'll be notified about new podcast interviews and article posts. This podcast is available wherever podcasts are enjoyed. Please like, follow, and subscribe. Based in Halifax, Nova Scotia, in addition to being an avid comic book collector, Ron Doucet is a director for animated series and currently works at Cartoon Conrad. He occasionally performs production supervision and creative consulting roles, teaches classes in animation, storyboards, and character design, and enjoys being a keynote speaker in conferences and seminars, along with demonstrating industry-related workshops at colleges and festivals. He's been working in the animation industry for over 25 years, having directed the animation for over 900 episodes of television, including shows for Cartoon Network, Nicktoons, Warner Brothers, BBC, Universal, Teletoon, and YTV. Over his career, Ron has hired and supervised over 500 animation artists. In 2001, Ron helped produce one of the very first fully animated Flash TV series. He's also had the privilege of working on his first feature film, Teen Titans Go to the Movies. One of Ron's recent projects hitting airwaves shortly is Super Team Canada. Starting in May, the animation comedy Super Team Canada focuses on the exploits of 6 little-known Canadian superheroes trying to save the world from evil giant robots, an unemployed octopus, and needy hardware store clerks. The stakes are high for these stereotypically underdog Canadian super unknowns who are called in as Earth's last resort when all the other superheroes have been destroyed. So without further ado, here's my chat with Ron Doucet about animation, comic books, and Super Team Canada. So Ron Doucet, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
No problem.
I appreciate your time. Before we get going with all the questions, I would like to know, what was the first comic book that you read?
It would have been a Batman comic. The earliest I can remember was an old Batman comic. It would have been early 80s, where he goes up against Catman. And Catman has him nailed down on a beach, and the tide is coming, and he's going to drown him. And Catman's suit would normally heal him, but it wasn't healing him, and that's the only one I vaguely remember. But it was DC Comics, even though later on I was more of a Marvel guy. It was DC Comics I had access to early on. Yeah, early 80s Batman comics was the earliest I can remember.
Very good. Well, great stuff growing up, but I'm wondering who or what inspires you to create today? And I know that you're in the field of animation, so you don't have to say comic books.
I'm not sure. When I see stuff that other people create, it really gets those creative juices flowing. Like I'm in the middle of watching a series now that Mike Judge, the creator of Beavis and Butthead and King of the Hill, is co-producing on, and he's doing voices on. It's called Common Side Effects. It's just really well written, and the design of it is just really good, really fascinating, a cool, different art direction style on it. It's just always kind of looking for that type of stuff, that, new stuff or rediscovering old stuff that just inspires you like that just gets those kind of creative juices flowing. But that's like a show out right now that I'm like obsessed with, that I've been watching, that's been kind of getting my brain going on writing and designing in a different way.
That's cool. As I mentioned very briefly, you are an animator, and your professional bio in animation is extremely impressive, I got to say. And I want to say thank you for all the work that you've done. I'm sure everyone listening would appreciate all the work that you've done. So I'm wondering, with that in mind, if you could talk just briefly about the highlights of your career so far.
Yeah, I've worked on lots and lots of different kind of stuff. I started off at the very beginning working on Oliver's Adventures, which is a Canadian broadcaster through Teletoon, basically a ripoff of Calvin and Hobbes. And that was my first time being a co-showrunner and director of a series, and I was young and didn't know what I was doing, and started out with that. And after that, lots of kid shows, preschool shows, only very kind of rarely adult kind of oriented shows. One that's based off of a comic book is Johnny Ryan's Prison Pit. I was helping to supervise the animation on that. And Six Point Harness was the studio that did the storyboards for it. And we did all the animation for it. And that was like a four-part kind of YouTube mini series. And that was quite gory and graphic because we stayed fairly true to the original comic and just kind of simplified the art style a bit to reduce the line mileage. Oh, what else? Tracy Tubera, he's a toy designer and a really cool style illustrator. He did the designs for Rob Dyrdek's Wild Grinders, and I directed the animation for that first season. I think it only did two seasons, and that's a kids on skateboards going on crazy adventures kind of series. It was for Nicktoons. Yeah, that one was pretty cool, pretty challenging. And of course, I co-directed the first four seasons and the movie for Teen Titans Go, and that one was a big ratings hit for Cartoon Network, and still is now. I think it's in its eighth or ninth season now, and that took up a big chunk of my life, 5 years nonstop to do those four seasons in the movie for that. And then, yeah, more recently, a show coming out, I believe, May 16th. We wrapped up, I think it was a year ago, we wrapped up on it. And it's only getting released now, is voiced by Will Arnett and Kevin McDonald and Marvel's Kobe Smulders is Super Team Canada. That one is coming out mid-May. And so that one was really fun to work with, along with Atomic Cartoons, another studio. They did the writing for it and everything. So yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's a lot of stuff, I tell you. And thank you for the Teen Titans. I got to say, in our household, that's a true winner. That's for sure.
Oh man,
Yeah,
there is no kid alive these past these past
that's
eight
for
years
sure.
that hasn't seen that. Yeah.
So I've got to ask you, with all that you've done in animation, I wondered, how did you get your start?
I took a little 2 year rinky-dink course at a local community college. It was called digital animation. So it was supposed to be half 2D animation, hand drawn, and half learning the 3D CG side of animation. But I really gravitated more towards the drawing, the hand drawn style, the paper and pencil animation style of it, and just did the bare minimum to get by in the 3D part of it. And this was like late 90s, so 3D CG was still, very new anyways. And so yeah, I just kind of gravitated towards the 2D animation aspect of it. And after taking that 2 year course, started to apply around Canada. And I was still just sticking around in Nova Scotia, where I was at and where I'm from. After 6 months of looking around, I finally got word from a former classmate of mine that the studio he ended up at in Halifax, Nova Scotia, they were hiring. So I came in and showed them my demo reel, my portfolio. They're like, "Yep, good enough," and got me on board, and that was it. And it was early 2000, and for a year and a half, I was just animating on a variety of different shows on that and kind of learning the software and everything. It was basically translating my hand-drawn paper and pencil animation that I had learned in college and applying it to like a stylus tablet, a Wacom tablet, and just drawing in the software frame by frame like digital paper. From there, after a year and a half of animating of that, I just crazy luck just got the opportunity to direct and just went from there. And then I've been pretty much a director of animation, yeah, ever since.
That's amazing. A lot of the people that I talk to, creators on this podcast, sometimes lead a double life. Some of them are animators that dabble in the world of comic books. So I want to ask you, what's that Venn diagram like? What's the intersection of animation and comic books based on your experience?
Not from me personally, like I would say every animator secretly dreams of being a comic book artist. And I've known several who have made that leap, who started off in animation and then gradually like became comic book artists. I would say for me, as a child and as a teenager, kind of would dream about it, would fantasize about it, here and there. And as time went on, I think I wanted to be like a comic strip artist. Like I loved like, Gary Larson's The Far Side and Jim Davis Garfield, and I collected all kinds of like comic strip compilation books as well, because my style was a bit more on the cartoony side and a simplified style than the more kind of hyper realistic, anatomically correct kind of superhero kind of style. And so I kind of always dreamt of being like a comic strip artist. And I remember like in my mid-teens reading an article that the odds of becoming a successful syndicated comic strip artist, your odds were better of becoming an NBA All-Star or being hired by the FBI. It was so, there were so many annual submissions, and it was just a very, very small fraction of a percentage, hired to do so. And then it's like, oh, okay, well, maybe I'll be more of a fine artist or just a commercial illustrator sort of thing. And then, as luck would have it, I first took a 2-year graphic design course. I saw myself like, liking that, and I could see myself doing a career into that. And then just as I was graduating from the 2-year graphic design course, I saw the ads for a new digital animation course at a local community college. And so went for the trip up and went through the open house, and I decided, yeah, this is what I want to do. I'd been watching obsessively Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies cartoons my entire childhood, right through my teenage years, at the point where, my parents are worried about me that I'm 16, 17 years old and I'm getting up at 7 a.m. Saturday mornings to watch cartoons and everything. But yeah.
Oh, that's great. Typically, there's a process when you're creating animation. I know that it can be very involved, but I'm wondering if you just give like the high level aspects of it. Where it starts, you've got to come up with an idea, right? And where does it go from there?
Yeah, it all starts with the concept, with an idea, and after that, it goes to some script writers, and sometimes the story artists, the storyboard artists are the script writers or co-writers of it. Generally, in like fast-paced kids cartoons kind of stuff, the showrunners or co-showrunners are kind of like the lead script writers, and they hire staff writers to kind of help do a lot of the grunt work of kind of like banging out the dialogue and stuff like that. So they all kind of jam together, coming up with lots of different story ideas and story synopsis, and then they start to kind of flesh out and develop the stories as they go. So it starts off with the script writing, write out the whole script. If it's an 11-minute episodes, it's usually about 15-page scripts. And if it's 22-minute episodes that are more of the drama or action oriented kind of cartoons, those are more 25, 28 page long scripts. And then from there, you cast for the voices. So you find all your voices, you got your principal cast voices for the main cast of characters, and you've got your secondary incidental characters, and usually those voice actors kind of play the role of doing multiple character acting, character voices as they go. And then from there it goes to storyboard artists, and that's where it's most familiar with comic books because you're illustrating, you're basically a cameraman and you're illustrating every single shot of the episode. So for an 11-minute kids cartoon like a SpongeBob cartoon or Teen Titans Go cartoons, they're all 11 minutes long. And those are somewhere in around about 160 to 200 shots per 11-minute episode. And you illustrate out all those camera angles and you pose out all the acting of the shots, and you're choreographing, you're like a cinematographer, you're figuring out all the shots, and you're just kind of really roughly illustrating out how every scene cut and scene transition and what all the on stage, on screen acting is going to look like. And then from there, it goes, you break it down to you're designing all the characters and all the props, even all the effects. You're designing all the backgrounds based off of those storyboards. And so you do all that artwork for that. And then it goes to what we call layout. That's both character layout and background layout. The character layout kind of poses the scene and sets up the scene with all the assets in it for the animator to kind of go in and animate with. You go from background layout to background paint, where you illustrate, similar to the backgrounds in a comic book. You illustrate all the backgrounds for every single shot, and it goes to another artist where they put in all the color for it. Sometimes it's very flat, simple colors. Other times it's lots of detail, lots of texture and shadow and shading and lighting. And it goes to the character animator where they have everything set up in their scene like that. They've got their character, they're laid out and sized up. They have the audio there for reference to do the lip sync with. They have the setting, the set, the background for the character to be animated on top of. And they move the character around and they animate it depending on the style of the show. Sometimes it's a rigged 2D computer drawn character that they just kind of puppet and move around, or it could be a more of a hand drawn, frame by frame, sort of more classically animated sort of style. More recently, the Ninja Turtles 2D animated Netflix movie came out a couple years ago, and Green Eggs and Ham, the new Animaniacs, is all more like hand drawn, frame by frame kind of style. And then from there it goes into effects like, like water splashes and glows and blurs and electrical stuff and energy beams and explosions and smoke and fumes all kind of get hand-drawn animated in, or a combination of computer-generated visual effects. It gets composited all together, so all the layers get all exported and re-imported back together, so we can do camera moves and stuff like that all together. And it goes into post-production, which is sound design, sound effects, music scoring, and then the audio mix to balance out all the audio levels so that the voices and the sound effects and the music are all blending in together and not competing with one another. Goes to air, whether it's a cable network or traditional media broadcasting or a streaming service or on YouTube.
Wow, that's amazing. There's a lot more to it than I thought, that's for sure. A
Well,
lot of
that's
hard work.
very summarized, but
Yeah,
yeah.
that's great. That's great. Now, I saw you because I was watching something on YouTube and understand you're part of the team at Cartoon Conrad, based in Nova Scotia. So, with that in mind, I wonder if you have a sort of sense of how the creative scene is on Canada's East Coast, maybe, when it comes to animation.
I had the pleasure of kind of being pretty much at the dawn of it. The East Coast animation scene just got started really like in the mid late 90s, and I got on board like early 2000 just as things were kind of ramping up. And in terms of like 2D animation for kids cartoons, I just by pure luck was there at the start of it. The early studios both aren't around anymore. There's one called Helix Animation. There was one called Kaleidoscope Animation, the one that I started off at, and they were all doing various forms and various types of 2D animation for television. There was a few kind of CG and visual effects companies or visual effects companies doing visual effects for live action shows. There was I'm trying to remember now. Well, there was Halifax Film, and before then, there was Salter Street Films. There was what else? Pixel Motion. There was Helix Digital up in City Cape Breton, and they were all doing yeah, different kinds of things, either in support of 2D animated series or doing visual effects for live action, like sci-fi series. Halifax Film was doing stop motion at the time, really good high-end stop motion stuff on various series for a few years. And so it was all kind of like this kind of mixture, and we were all not really competing with one another. We're all kind of doing very kind of different types of animation, different styles of animation. So it was all kind of different skill sets at the time. And as studios, as they usually do, they come and go and they rise and fall. I just kind of like would go with the flow with other kind of studios that came about, and some are still around and everything. The studios around in Halifax now, there's Jam Media, there's IOM, there's Copernicus, there's Hamina, there's Cartoon Conrad. And so they're all either, 3D CG or 2D animation for TV and film studios. Yeah, there's been ups and downs, but really it's been a steadily pretty progressive and growing and stable animation creative scene here for the past 25 years. It started off, small and kind of scattered, and now yeah, we've got at least 4 or 5 solid studios and lots of video game development studios as well.
No, that's great to hear. It sounds like it's pretty vibrant. So that's a really good thing to hear. This is a question I've usually asked comic book creators, and they have a definite opinion on it. As a animator, I wanted to get your opinion of the use of AI for image creation. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a very it's a controversial and touchy subject, especially amongst artists. At the start, when I would see or learn how it was made and how it was generated and how it would just kind of scrape, the surface of the entire internet in record time in order to essentially maybe, steal and take from everything that's published online, essentially taking, I see it as almost essentially taking what artists have used Google Images, for instance, or Pinterest as reference. If a background layout artist in animation wants to, for instance, find reference of drawing the Eiffel Tower, because there's a scene in an animated sequence where the characters visit Paris and they want to see what the city landscape of Paris looks like. And so they want to see what the Eiffel Tower looks like. They're going to look up some photos on Google Images or on Pinterest of what the Eiffel Tower looks like, and they're going to redraw it in their own way, in their own style, in the style of the show that they're working on. And so it's going to be simplified, it's going to be stylized. They're going to pick an angle that they're going to draw it at that's going to be new and unique, but they're looking up that reference in order to see what it looks like. Just like they're going to look up at what a suit of armor is going to look like, different styles of suits of armor for this prop, for this costume, for this character on this show, for this scene. And before there was the internet, people would just look up in books and had big book collections and encyclopedia collections, and they would just kind of look up, reference, and redraw it for whatever purposes that they needed. And way back in the 1940s, in Walt Disney days, they would find someone to bring in fawns and deer into the studio for the animators to watch and look at, to draw for a Bambi reference for the movie Bambi, of course. And so it's all for reference. And so my opinion of AI now, of course, like all artists, I don't agree with people using generative AI to create artwork that they claim as their own, because it's not theirs. An algorithm created it for them. But I'm kind of just recently starting to sort of accept the fact that you can't stop artists in using the tool just like they would, like we've been since the internet started, and we've been artists and animators using the internet as reference in the past 25 some years now to look up imagery for reference online, to use it in that same way to just generate an image and use that for reference, not using it directly, but using it as a jumping off point, as like a concept art kind of point, and to go off of that, to give you ideas, to give the artist ideas to then create something on their own. That I'm starting to warm up to, starting to accept just recently, that that's kind of like a tool that artists use in order to create reference for themselves as a jumping off point, as a springboard to create their concept art for their visual ideas. But for me personally, yeah, I'm not agreeing with the whole generative art, as it's just scraping the internet, taking every illustration, every photo, every image in the trillions that's online, to mash it together to create something new and then to present that as your own artwork. That I don't agree with.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you for providing your input. That's for sure. Now, I know as an animator, you're working on a lot of stuff, and a lot of stuff is under NDA. You did hint about a project that's coming along in May. Can you talk about your next project? Are you allowed to talk about something that's coming up, or is it all under wraps?
No, yeah, no, not really. Anything that's coming up, yeah, later this year or in 2026. No, not really allowed to talk about it yet. But like I said, the brand new show, Super Team Canada, voiced by Will Arnett. Yeah, that's coming out May 16th. And that one I can't talk about. It's about team of not so good Canadian superheroes, which I find the timing is pretty good. I'm glad they waited this long before airing it because now that Trump is in office and we've got tariffs going on, it's actually really good timing. The Canadian team won the American team in hockey there last month, and so it's perfect.
Oh my. Okay. Well, something to look forward to, that's for sure. So, for all the projects that you have on the go right now and in the future, where do you recommend that people go online to find out more about your work?
Yeah, just cartoonconrad.com, I guess. We don't advertise that much what we're doing until it's, like you said, NDAs, we're not allowed to say or even speak of anything until it's on the verge of being streamed or broadcast. So yeah, it's on that site there is probably where you can get the most info.
Well, Ron, those are all the questions I have for you, but I'm wondering, is there something I didn't ask that you'd like to get across in this interview?
You didn't ask me of any comic book artists that I may have as favorites or that I've recently discovered.
Well, we should talk about that because I understand you're a comic book collector for the last 25 years too, right?
Yeah, exactly. A little bit, a little bit. Like I have to do a shout out to the Invincible series on Amazon. Oh my gosh. Like I was a fan of the comic and now seeing it animated. I remember thinking when the Invincible comic first came out, I don't know, 25 years ago. I remember thinking this would make for a fantastic animated series, but the amount of gore and the amount of violence and the amount of destruction, no one would fund this. No one has the budget to do this. It would have to be like, made in Japan. And sure enough, like, 25 years later, here we are, and it's a four-season Robert Kirkman hit, and it looks fantastic, and it's fabulous. I have to do a shout out to Roberto Della Torre. Just recently discovered this artist. He's an Italian artist who I believe, I can't find too much information on the guy. He just started doing Conan the Barbarian fan art, and people would just kind of write to him on his social media requests and give him a few bucks, and he'd draw it up, roll it up, and mail it out to them. And I believe now he's going to be an official, if he's not already an official, Conan the Barbarian artist. His stuff, he is channeling old school John Buscema, Conan the Barbarian art style. I'm blown away by the man. He's just fantastic.
Thanks to Ron for the chat. You can discover more about Ron Doucet at cartoonconrad.com and on Instagram at instagram.com/cartoonconrad. And thank you for tuning in to the True North Country Comics podcast. I invite you to visit the True North Country Comics website to listen to even more conversations with creators and their insight about making comic books and graphic novels. I also encourage you to subscribe via the website so you'll be notified about new podcast interviews and article posts. This podcast is available wherever podcasts are enjoyed. Please like, follow, and subscribe. You can follow along True North Country Comics on most social media sites, and you can send any and all feedback to John at truenorthcountrycomics.com. Thanks for tuning in, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics Podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2025.